So recently I got my A-level results, which were a massive improvement from my AS grades, and I promised myself that if I ever managed to get 3 A's that I'd make a video on it and share some tips and advice on how I revised. So last year I took biology, chemistry, maths and politics for AS, and I got a B in politics, a B in biology, C in chemistry and a C in maths. And so I dropped politics last year because I didn't like essay-based subjects, and continued with chemistry, biology and maths, which I got 3 A's in this year. And since I really needed the grades this year, I had to work extra hard to try and turn those grades around into A's so I could get into uni. And also, on an extra note, I didn't actually use textbooks as such. I didn't think they were helpful compared to using some online resources instead. So I'll link the online resources down in the description box below, which I found helpful. So my first tip would be to truly and fully understand all the information you have learnt in class, and always ask your teacher in class if you're ever stuck on something they've taught you or on something you've learned, because there's no point in revising if you don't understand all the information, and usually your teacher is your best resource, so always ask them, because they'll probably explain it quicker than you will reading a textbook and trying to understand the information yourself. Not saying you can't do it, but a teacher would explain it quicker to you and in a way that you'd probably understand. My second tip would be to print out the syllabus and use it as a checklist, because everything they'll ask you on the exam will be in the syllabus. They won't ask outside the circle, they will ask inside the circle. So I printed out my chemistry and biology syllabuses into little booklets last year, well for this year, and you can see that they have bullet points, points on that you need to learn. So I would, as I revise, I would just tick it off as soon as I've learnt it, just so you know what you've learned and what you haven't, and it acts as a really good checklist to see if you're missing out something on revision or if you've completed everything. So my third tip would be to have a list of all the topics that you need to revise. So I had one here which had all topics here, and then also whether first I've revised a topic, and then also whether I've done, here I've wrote workbook, but you can just write past questions or questions and then tick it off. So once you revised it, you want to be doing the past questions as well, just so you know that you know how to do those types of questions in those topics. I think having a list really keeps on top of everything that you revised, and it clearly shows out what you haven't and what you have revised, which is important during exam time, as you can see then like which topics you've revised more of and which ones you haven't revised as much of, and then you can go for those topics. So my fourth tip would be to have a weekly timetable to set which subjects you're going to revise each day, and a monthly timetable to set which topics you're going to revise each day in that month. And it just really helps keep on top of everything and keep on top of your revision. Just like writing a list out, like I mentioned before. All of these tips these 2 tips really just help you keep on top of your revision and make sure you don't miss out some and then stress about it during exam time. So my fifth tip would be to do coloured notes. I mean, last year I did just black and white notes and I felt like the information just didn't go into my head. I mean, it was just a bit plain and boring and nothing really stood out. So this year I had these little booklets, one for biology, one for chemistry, which had all my notes in, and they were nicely coloured like this. Show you a nice page. Yep. Find it. So something like just having a bit more colour. So actually, I feel like the information sticks in more when your notes are coloured. So like this. Make sure, like, because I'm more of a visual learner, I quite like having more pictures and graphs in my revision, so stuff like this really helps me revise. Same for chemistry. I mean, even though there's not as much visual aid in them, and it's more just shapes and hexagons, but I feel like it really helps if you have some visual or images to it, you know, and colour. Helps you remember the information a bit better. My sixth tip would be to make your revision interactive. So what I mean is by having stuff like flashcards, like these, made for chemistry again, and biology, and making sure they have like key points on and like the answers on the back, so you can easily test yourself if you think like you don't understand, I mean you don't remember a bit of an information, it just has to stick in. And these are like really quick, they're like mini tests, you can treat them as. And also, I also had these really helpful I call them exam revision cards, which are basically when you're going through past questions and past papers, and if you think like a question comes up pretty often and you don't get it, or there's a question that comes up and you don't remember the answers to it, what I did was have a piece of card and write the question on one side of the card, and I also wrote the topic on the right hand corner, and then wrote the mark scheme on the back. And I feel like this is helpful, especially for biology, because I mean biology is basically reciting the mark scheme. I feel like doing this would help you remember answers to questions, because usually the same types of questions come up every year. I mean, they're not going to change that much. Even when I took the exam, there was like a syllabus change and the format of the exams changed. The type and style of the questions, especially in the chemistry exams, was still quite similar. So I would recommend using these exam revision cards. Also, another way, this is another type of revision card you could use. I did not use this at all. I will use it in the future. Well, and another tip would be to make your revision interactive is to teach someone. So become like a mentor for school or something, or for college, wherever you are, sixth form, and teach somebody in the year below the information you learned in the first year. And that just helps refreshes your memory and the information, so that it acts as a type of revision. So the main point of this tip is to try different methods, so say like mind maps and bullet points and everything, etc., and see which type of revision makes the information stick. So tip number 7 would be to memorize and not recognize, because a huge problem when revising is that you look at the information, say in a revision guide or in your notes, and you're like, yeah, I remember this, but then when it actually comes to exam, you can't seem to remember it. So that was like a problem that I had, and because I was just looking through my notes last year and I didn't actually try and remember the information as such. So the tip would be just to use interactive revision, I would say, so like the flashcards I was suggesting, and make sure the information sticks in. So my 8th final tip is to do past papers and questions. Cannot stress this enough, but it really is important for you to develop exam technique. That's the most important thing, I think, especially for a subject like biology, where you don't know what they want from you in an exam, basically. You just want to be doing a load of past papers and past questions, because usually the answers are the same and they don't usually change that often. So practicing those will make you remember and understand why the answer is like that, or why the question is answered like that. And it also helps you get marks in the exam, which is the most important thing. So some final advice: you really need consistent motivation to succeed. I mean, for when I was revising my A-levels, I went into college every morning to do chemistry, because that was the subject I didn't do as well as in my AS. And I went in to revise for a solid hour. So it depends what you want to do. I mean, are you willing to work for it? And also, I didn't procrastinate as much during my revision because I had a goal set in mind. And I mean, I think if you really are aiming to go for a course at uni or going for your future goal, and if you have that in mind, I feel like you won't be procrastinating as much. So I think you need to sacrifice some time to revise during or nearer to exam period, because I mean, when I was in college, I used all my frees up to revise, and I had to sacrifice time hanging out with friends instead and do revision. So whether you're ready to sacrifice things in the short term so that you're in the long term, that you'd be in a better place. So just keep that in mind. And when you sit down to revise, make sure you actually do and don't procrastinate. So I recommend some apps such as like Tide or Forest. They're in the Apple Store, and I think Forest is on the Google Play Store. So those, I guess, help you make sure that you're revising and don't click out your phone every 2 seconds when you're doing revision. Results reflect action. Just keep that in mind, because obviously last year when I got BCC, obviously my revision wasn't working for me compared to this year when I turned it up a notch and came out with 3 A's. So just remember, even if you didn't do as well this year, there's also and always time to turn it around. And if you wasn't happy with your A-level grades or whatever grades you're getting, just don't be so hard on yourself and take some time out to think what you could improve in your revision and think about why something isn't working for you, because it will always work itself out once you think it through. So thanks for watching my video, and I hope you found it helpful. I'll elaborate on subject-specific tips and stuff in my next video, and if you've got any questions, please comment down below, and thanks for watching.